On this episode of Locked On Canadiens, Montreal Canadiens took care of business against the Senators and ended that winning streak. How did they do it?
You're Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to episode 1160 of Locked On Canadiens. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day and for subscribing on YouTube and wherever you subscribe to your podcast. Doing that ensures you don't miss an episode and it supports us here at the show. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I'm Ian Boisvert, also known as Maybe It's Ian. And our YouTube viewers will know this, but I am not joined today by the incomparable Laura Saba, also known as the Active Stick. Laura is traveling, so you get my first crack at a solo episode. The goal of today is to keep the show on the rails long enough for Laura to come back. It is the most fourth line shift of a podcast, just buying the time for the stars to get back on the ice. I hope our Canadian listeners enjoyed a happy and healthy Thanksgiving and are getting ready for some afternoon hockey on Monday. I'm very lucky that you guys get to do that. It's always weird as an American to see that day come up and be like, hey, why is there afternoon hockey? But I'll never complain. I do have a lot planned for today's episode. We have a terrific win against Ottawa to break down. We'll set up Monday night's game against the Pittsburgh Penguins, and we will revisit and debrief last week's forecast to see how the Habs measured up against our expectations. But we have to start with that big win against Ottawa. 4-1, Montreal comes away victorious. They end a 9-game losing streak against the Ottawa Senators, which, as a Canadiens fan and permanent hater of the Ottawa Senators, was always very difficult to deal with. So to get that win and end that streak, maybe it's a sign of a better season series to come against the Ottawa Senators. We got 2 goals from Cole Caulfield. The top line came alive. But the big story for me surrounds 2 players and special teams. One of those players I'll start with is in net. Sam Montembeault, man. He finally gave up a goal on a really nice shot from Tim Stützle in the third period. So he went 5 periods without giving up a goal. Through 2 games, Montembeault has seen 73 shots. He has 72 saves. There's a 986 save percentage. Obviously, he probably won't sustain that for the entire season. They needed all of it against Toronto. They needed every last save that he gave them. But Saturday against the Sens, the Montembeault performance was more of just a cherry on top of a really nice game for Montreal. They had a great first period against the Senators. The second period, Otto kind of put their foot on the gas a little bit, but Montembeault held them in the game. And then the third period, Montreal scored two more goals. Ottawa did get on the board, but the game was never really in any danger of, relying on a Sam Montembeault save to keep Montreal from losing it. And what I've noticed in the time that we've been watching Sam Montembeault so far this season is he hasn't made a ton of desperation saves. He's made a couple. There was a few, sliding pad saves that he made against Ottawa. But generally speaking, he looks like he's just in good position on most shots. Lots of pucks in the chest, lots of pucks off the shoulders. He's getting his glove out in front of things. The rumbling that is starting now is because of the state of Canadian goaltending and not Montreal Canadiens goaltending. I mean, the goaltending of the nation of Canada. Sam Montembeault is going to get a really legitimate shot to play for the Four Nations team, which is not something I would have thought headed into this season. I'm a big supporter of Sam Montembeault. I think he's a lot better than most of the league gives him credit for, but to think that he could be the starting goaltender for Team Canada in an international tournament, it's pretty exciting, right? As I alluded to, the state of Canadian goaltending is such where it's basically him and Jordan Binnington who are going to duke it out for that spot. So if Sam Montembeault can continue to just put up solid goaltending, he doesn't need to steal games for the Montreal Canadiens, but if he's winning behind this defense, he's going to have a really good shot at representing Canada at the Four Nations, which is exciting. It's, we go from, Carey Price being the Canada's goalie at the Olympics to now Sam Montembeault also repping the Montreal Canadiens for Team Canada at an international tournament. But, alluding to playing well behind this defense, The Canadiens' defense made it easier against the Ottawa Senators. Just 9 high-danger chances for the Senators at all situations. That compares to 24 that they gave up against Toronto. So a lot cleaner. They're protecting the house, as Marty and the defense have been saying since training camp started. The house being the diamond in front of the net, the area of where high danger chances are collected. They're not giving up a ton from those areas on the ice. So they kept the Sens to the outside. I thought when they were doing their best against Toronto and Boston, that's also what they were doing. They were keeping those teams to the outside. It's just you're going to give up more shots because it's okay for them to shoot from there, but they're not of high quality. And if Sam Montembeault can just be that well-positioned goalie, he's going to stop most, if not all of those. But speaking of the defense, the second player I want to talk about is one Lane Hutson, who everyone is talking about all the time now, it seems. He continued to prove doubters wrong. Every time he touched the puck, you can feel the crowd get excited. He had one assist on the Heineman goal that they then took away, and then they gave back to him overnight. So he ended the game with 2 assists. Even on that goal, the Heineman goal, if they did not give him the assist, the entry that he provided created the goal. So even if he wasn't being rewarded with a point, we know that that goal was created because Lane Hutson was able to break in for the Montreal Canadiens, something they struggle to do from time to time on the power play. And then on his second assist, he sets up Alex Newhook. But before that, he absolutely walks Brady Tkachuk. And Brady Tkachuk gets upset at the end of it and tries to throw just like a push at Hutson that fails. And Hutson just keeps walking him, goes back to Newhook, who's now wide open because Hutson has pulled all of the Ottawa Senators down to him on the wall. That's the sort of attention that he's dragging when he's on the ice. So only Hutson played, or I should say only Mike Matheson played more than Hutson at 5-on-5 against Ottawa. So the Canadiens are just letting him run wild, and it's working. So just keep doing that. It's paying dividends not only for Lane Hutson, but the Montreal Canadiens are benefiting from the play of Lane Hutson. And you could tell he was getting under Tkachuk's skin. There was another clip where Hutson is behind the net doing about 100 head fakes per minute, and Brady just starts to like mock him in front of the net and like, weaves back and forth around Montembeault to, just kind of mock him. But if that's all he has, I think the Canadiens did pretty well. Special teams. The penalty kill was perfect at 4-for-4, which against the Ottawa Senators is quite a task. They're, last year they had a bit of a moniker as a power play merchant kind of team. But not on Saturday night. Penalty kill was perfect, 4-for-4, and the power play scores for the 3rd straight game. They're 1-for-4 in the game. 2 of those power play goals for the entire season so far are from their second unit. And last year, Eric Engels said that the Canadiens only had 4 from the second unit all year. So the question now seems to be, when is Lane Hutson going to play on power play 1? And I think I really liked Jared Book from Habs Eyes on the Prize, his tweet that said, whatever power play Hutson is playing on is just power play 1. Because honestly, that's not a bad reality to come to either. If Lane Hutson is providing that kind of play on the power play 2, maybe the other team's penalty killers are going to have to decide which one they want to match up against. Do you want to send everybody out against Cole Caulfield, or do you want to match them up against Lane Hutson? You sort of have to pick your poison if you're Montreal. That's the strength of having 2 good power play units, something we have not seen a ton of. And I thought Matheson had a really nice bounce back game against Ottawa. I think that, again, a lot of the hate directed towards him is entirely misplaced. But he did not have a great game against Boston. He did bounce back against Ottawa in a meaningful way. On the penalty kill, I thought they were getting sticks in lanes, getting bodies in lanes, just didn't give much from the dangerous areas. Josh Anderson might just be a good penalty killer, which going into the season, I did not think would be a reality that we ended up at. And it's, as we say on this show, you win games at 5-on-5 and lose them on special teams. Montreal played really well at 5-on-5, and on special teams, they capitalized. They scored on their power play, and they did not give up a power play goal. So, other than that, I thought Justin Barron kind of struggled to the point where it might be time to talk about replacing him. We'll get into that in just a little bit. Caden Goulet continued to be great. That third line of Gallagher, Evans, and Anderson continues to be strong. And for all those reasons, Montreal was able to defeat Ottawa and get back in the win column on Saturday night. So all in all, pretty great weekend for your Montreal Canadiens. Up next, we're going to revisit our weekly forecast from last week to see how the Habs met our expectations. And we'll get into all that in just a minute. I love being in the middle of the action, whether that's taking in a concert or enjoying a night at the ballpark. It's just more fun being there. The place where you can go to get the events that you want to see is Gametime. We're big fans of Gametime here thanks to their all-in pricing. This is a setting in the app that you can toggle on so Gametime tells you exactly how much you'll be paying to get in. No hidden fees. Plus, with their seat views, you know what kind of action you'll be able to see. And with their lowest price guarantee, you know you're getting the best deal for your tickets. And it's for all these reasons that I went to Gametime to secure tickets to the Habs game against the Islanders this weekend. I got some great seats at an even better price. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, we are back. But before we jump back into our agenda, I want to thank you for making Locked On Canadiens your first listen of the day. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On NHL podcast. Locked On NHL provides you with a national perspective on all things NHL each and every day, with national experts and local insight on every team in the league. Available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Locked On NHL would probably be pretty helpful right now if you're still playing the wait, that guy plays there game, which I will probably play to some point in December because that's just how the NHL works. All right, I want to break down our weekly forecast from last week. That's a segment we introduced to sort of set up the week ahead, give you our expectations and our goals for the team headed into the week. We went into this week looking at the schedule and thinking this is a murderer's row of games for the Montreal Canadiens. Not necessarily, the Ottawa game wasn't necessarily one where they were completely outmatched, but it was definitely one where you could see it being a very difficult game for Montreal. And we set their goal at 3 points, where if they got 3 points, we would have been ecstatic. Well, they walked out with 4. They went 2-1 this week. I thought that, the Toronto game, going back to that, we kind of said, stay out of the box, you'll be fine. They did take quite a few penalties that game, but so it goes. They did end up killing all those penalties, and Stan Montembeault was excellent. The game against Boston, I thought they started okay, and then the second period just completely collapsed on them. I said they would have to weather a storm. That storm came in the second period. They did not weather it. That's sort of the story of that one. Third period was much better, but a lot of that score effects, Boston kind of taking their foot off the gas a little bit because they were up by so much. So, Montreal goes into Boston, a really tough environment for them. A loss was, tolerable in that instance. And then Saturday, like we talked about in the first segment, they go into Ottawa. Or I should say Ottawa comes into Montreal. I keep thinking, even last week when I set it up, I said it was a road game for the Canadiens, and I can't get out of that mentality. So Montreal hosted Ottawa. And, the one thing I said about that game was to play between the whistles, and they did. Arber Xhekaj has gone from penalty minute leader in the preseason to going 3 games now without a single penalty minute. He has not sat in the penalty box for a second. That's, when we talked about Arber Xhekaj needing to, improve, that's sort of what we were talking about was, I want to see Arber Xhekaj play hockey for this team. And if he's in the penalty box or he gets kicked out of games, we can't see him do that. So he mission accomplished on that front. The Canadiens, especially against Ottawa, I think they avoided a lot of the extracurriculars because that would have just put Ottawa on the power play more often. And maybe the game gets out of hand early before Montreal can get out ahead. So, all in all, a really great week, a great start to the week from the Montreal Canadiens. I want to break down. I have some 3 stars. Third star of the week, I'll give to Lane Hutson, 4 assists. He creates something every time he has the puck. And I'm just so excited every time we get to watch him play hockey. He's the kind of player that brings you out of your seat. I'm going to be at the Islander game on Saturday, and I cannot wait to see him live and see how opposing fans interact or react to the way that he moves around on the ice. Second star, I've got Cole Caulfield, 4 goals. I think Cole Caulfield's just all the way back. I think last season was tough for him. He was coming back off that shoulder surgery. Maybe it wasn't completely, ready. Not to say he was playing hurt, but just his recovery wasn't complete yet. He looks like he's going to have an absolutely, groundbreaking year for himself, which is great news for the Montreal Canadiens and even better news for Cole Caulfield. So he's got 4 goals in 3 games. I do think that 45 goals is not out of the question at this point. And maybe he'll make that even look stupid and do way more than that. But the first star for me is obvious. It is Sam Montembeault. 2 wins, 986 save percentage. We can't expect him to do this all year, but he just looks locked in, doesn't he? Like, whenever the camera zooms in on him, the camera that's at the other net and it zooms in on him, he looks like he's giving a death stare. And he just looks so intense and locked in. I don't know what his training regimen was like this summer, but whatever it was, he needs to do it forever from now on. So Sam Montembeault off to a really, really great start. I do want to say something about, I do want to say an unsung hero for the week, and maybe he's not totally unsung because people have been singing his praises, but Caden Gooley had a fantastic start to this season. 3 assists, didn't have much of a training camp. Through 3 games, he's been on the ice for all 6 of the Canadiens' 5-on-5 goals. Now, plus minus, all of those things don't really matter, but the fact is that he's a part of the Canadiens' offense, which is something that we wanted to see him do last year, and he didn't really take that step last year. But now he seems poised to take that step, and sometimes he's taking shifts with Lane Hutton, but even if he's not, he's taking shifts with Mike Matheson, another offensively minded defenseman. So he's not relegated to just playing really tough minutes in his own zone. On the other hand, Arber Xhekaj and Justin Barron, that third pair has been bad. And I don't think it's really all Arber Xhekaj. I think most of it falls on Justin Barron. His decisions with the puck have not looked great. His reads without the puck have not looked great. I want to talk about him in our weekly forecast segment on tomorrow's episode because we do need more from him. And we especially need more from him because it looks like Logan Mailloux has no interest in playing for the Laval Rocket this year. The season opening game, he gets 4 points, 2 goals, 2 assists in a defeat of the Providence Bruins. If he keeps playing like that, he's going to force Montreal's hand and have them call him back up. And perhaps that's why the Canadiens decided to place Alex Barré-Boulet on waivers on Sunday afternoon. So Montreal put him on waivers at 2:00 with the purpose of sending him down to Laval. With that in mind, one, it means that they really believe in Heineman and Kapanen, which is great because I think those guys have been great. I think keeping Alex Barré-Boulet would have been fine, but there's no other forward that's ready to come back right now. So they're clearing a roster spot, and Raphael Harvey-Pinard isn't ready to come back. He hasn't been practicing. So is this a move that the Canadiens are making to try to get Mailloux back up into the NHL? Or is it just a move to get Laval another forward? Either way, by the time you're listening to this, if it's past 2:00 on Monday, you will already know the answer to this, and maybe I will look even more foolish than I usually do. But with that said, Mike Matheson also had a therapy day on Sunday. With the Canadiens and every other team in the NHL, that can mean he's hurt or it can mean nothing. So there's really not much to glean from that. But, going back to the point about bringing up Mailloux to potentially replace Justin Barron, maybe the Canadiens feel that Alex Barré-Boulet will make it through waivers and Justin Barron wouldn't. Because Justin Barron does need to go on waivers if they want to send him down to Laval. So, maybe the Canadiens are kind of taking him being claimed into that approach. Alex Barré-Boulet was claimed a couple times last season on waivers, if I remember correctly. So it's quite possible that we are not seeing Alex Barré-Boulet for the rest of the year, but you never know. Like I said, you might already have the answer to this on Monday, but we will also break it down on Tuesday's episode. All right, in our last segment, the schedule does not stop for the Montreal Canadiens. We are going to get you ready for their tilt against the Pittsburgh Penguins on Monday night, and we will break down that matchup in just a moment. Hey, NFL fans. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Maybe you like the Bills to beat the Jets at -136 on Monday night, or perhaps you're taking the over on Breece Hall rushing yards set at 53.5. Either way, FanDuel is the place to play. So when you get the hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. All right, we are back in our final segment. We're going to break down our game against the Pittsburgh Penguins on Monday night. Montreal's schedule to open the season is one of the most condensed ones I've seen in some time. They will have played their 4th game of the year against Pittsburgh on Monday night. Pittsburgh Penguins, not a great start to their season. 1-2-0 headed into Monday night. 6-0 loss to the Rangers to open the season. A 6-3 win over the Red Wings to follow. And a 4-2 loss to Toronto over the weekend. Defense may be an issue for the Pittsburgh Penguins. At least 3 goals a game given up. Tristan Jarry gave up all 6 against the Rangers. Joel Blomqvist has a more respectable 3.03 goals against average through 2 games. Either way, look for the Canadiens to capitalize on a porous defense. The Penguins are currently giving up an average of 35 shots per game, which is the worst in the NHL. Montreal's had a hard time generating shots, especially against Toronto and certainly against Boston as well. I think they finished against Ottawa in the mid-20s. So it's an opportunity to keep their foot on the gas offensively. Malkin and Crosby continue to lead the way. 7 combined .33 games for those two. All assists. Crosby just looks like he's never going to slow down, huh? On this podcast, we were very much hoping that he would not sign with the Pittsburgh Penguins and end up a Montreal Canadien. That does not look like it will happen, unfortunately, unless he requests a trade here, but I would not count on that. Penguins special teams seem fairly strong, 22% on the power play, 90% on the PK. Of course, very small sample sizes this early in the season. Montreal did not beat Pittsburgh last season. 3 games, Montreal went 0-1-2. One of those 2 overtime losses was a 24-round shootout loss that ended with Jansen Harkins scoring the winner and mercifully ending that game. I'm looking for the Canadiens' first line to keep rolling. Suzuki finally got off the schneid with a good game and a point. He had a breakaway against Ottawa that he nearly scored on. He was interfered with, and a penalty was upcoming. It might have been a penalty shot, but Cole Caulfield came and pushed the puck over the line. So, I'm sure Suzuki's happier with the point and the win, but it's nice to see him get off the schneid a little bit. He did not look great against Boston and Toronto. So for him to get going, that means that line has become more dangerous. Juraj Slafkovsky is quietly a point-per-game player right now. 3 assists in the 3 games. He did leave the game against Ottawa for a few minutes at the end of one of the periods. I think it was at the end of the second period. He left with an injury, came back, but he did start the next period. So he seems to be okay. Like we said, Cole Caulfield is just shooting the lights out right now. So looking for him to keep it rolling against Pittsburgh. Another home game for Montreal. They've won both of their home games so far. On the other side of things, guys who need to start getting going, I think Kirby Dach needs to start rolling. We obviously knew he was going to need an on-ramp for this season. I think he's missed something like 150 games over the last 2 years. So it's not unbelievable to think that, well, he's maybe not up to speed yet. The preseason kind of devolved into madness. So Kirby Dach probably didn't get the greatest, jump to his season. He seems to step off, which again, to be expected when he's missed so much time. And he's working with, a new line mate in Yoel Armia. So I can't wait to watch another Caden Gooley, Sidney Crosby battle. Those guys always seem to go at it when these two teams play against each other. Even since Caden Gooley was a rookie, he was matched up against Sidney Crosby in these games, which is just an incredible amount of belief that the Canadiens have always had in Caden Goulet to be able to handle these moments. I would imagine that Monday night will be no different, that we're going to see him matched up against Sidney Crosby. And, with Monday's games, we won't get a chance to include them in our weekly forecast. So look for those games. I should say look for the games against LA and the New York Islanders to be part of that segment tomorrow. But, other guys that I think need to keep things going or at least get started. I don't know if Justin Barron will play in this game. If my theory about Logan Mayo being called up is correct, it might spell the end for him in the lineup, at least for now. I'd like to see if Jaden Struble is finally healthy enough to play. He's been practicing, or at least maybe not with the team, but he's at least been hitting the practice ice. It's possible that on Monday we get a completely new look third pair. It could be Jaden Struble and Logan Mayo for all we know. We'll also need to look out for our Alex Barré-Boulet potentially clearing waivers. If he doesn't, what does that mean for the Canadiens up front? Do they call up another forward from Laval if they're not calling up a defenseman? Does that mean Michael Pezzetta can draw into the lineup more easily? And, maybe I'm looking for this week, should Alex Barré-Boulet get claimed, can Kapanen and Emil Heineman make the Canadiens not regret putting Alex Barré-Boulet on waivers? It is a risk because I've really liked Barré-Boulet in the early goings in Montreal. I liked him a lot in training camp, and I liked him a lot in the first couple games. But the Canadiens are looking at this probably holistically and seeing that Emil Heineman and Kapanen probably have, a longer term outlook with this team than Alex Barré-Boulet does, unfortunately. Alex Barré-Boulet is a really good utility player. If someone claims him, he's going to go right into their NHL lineup. I have no other thoughts about that. So we'll break this game down on Tuesday's episode and set up the rest of the week. But for now, I do want to get you to our trivia. I did see somebody in the comments got this right. I thought it was a very tough one. I'll repeat the question for you. Name the player: Montreal, New York Rangers, St. Louis, Toronto, Boston, Edmonton. And someone had pointed out in the comments that the Edmonton in this case was actually Edmonton of the World Hockey Association, because this is Jacques Plante. That was a wild bunch of teams that he played for. I obviously great Montreal Canadian. I knew he was a Ranger. I knew he was a Blue. I knew he was a Maple Leaf. I did not know he played for Boston, and I did not know he played for Edmonton of the World Hockey Association. So that's definitely one of the cooler career paths to follow amongst these players. So that was a lot of fun. All right, sticking with the theme here. This is a former Canadian and Pittsburgh Penguin. Montreal, New Jersey, Phoenix, Columbus, Chicago, Dallas, Florida, Pittsburgh. Montreal, New Jersey, Phoenix, Columbus, Chicago, Dallas, Florida, Pittsburgh. So good luck with that. But with that, we're going to step aside. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, head over to Locked On NHL to see what else is going on around the league. As a reminder, we are free and available everywhere you get your podcasts, including YouTube. So be sure to subscribe to Locked On Canadiens so you don't miss an episode. You can follow the show on Twitter at @LO_Canadiens or email us at lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. We're also on Instagram at Locked On Canadiens. You can find Laura at The Active Stick. You can find me at Maybe It's Ian. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.